I'm Adam P. Kennedy. Welcome to Chronicling Greatness and American Heroes of War. We're honoring the greatest warriors and leaders in modern American military history. The men who put their lives on the line to keep America and the world free. On this show, a conversation with Korean War Distinguished Service Cross Recipient, Legion of Valor member, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Agnew. We're glad you've joined us. Their stories and the experiences of the Korean War. It's coming up right now. Richard Agnew was born on June 6, 1931 in Manhattan, New York. In 1947, Agnew enlisted in the U.S. Army and served proudly with airborne infantry units. He rose through the ranks and was commissioned through Officer Candidate School as a second lieutenant in 1952. He served in combat in Korea with the 40th Infantry Division. On the night of July 19, 1953, Lieutenant Agnew engaged in hand-to-hand combat with enemy soldiers deep behind enemy lines. For his extraordinary heroism in that engagement, he was awarded the U.S. Army's Distinguished Service Cross, our nation's second highest award for valor, and the Purple Heart Medal for the wounds he sustained in that life and death struggle. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Let's go back to June of 1950. You are already in the service. Were you expecting America to be in another war so quickly after World War II?
No, I had no idea. Nobody did. It was a surprise. It was like Pearl Harbor. It was a surprise attack. No, North Koreans came over across the parallel on Sunday and in mass.
Right.
I mean, heck, they went all the way down to Busan in no time. And that's where we had a big perimeter down there. We held that perimeter until September of 50, and that's when MacArthur got a lot of troops together. They had the Incheon landing, I think it was September 15th, 1950. And that was a success. And we cut off the Korean Army totally.
All right, so you graduate from Officer Candidate School. You were commissioned a lieutenant, second lieutenant?
Second lieutenant, yeah. And then I went to since I was very airborne or qualified, I didn't go right to Korea from there. I went to a airborne regimental combat team, which is a little bit larger than a regiment. And they were stationed right there at Fort Benning.
And how long were you there for?
Oh, not long, few months. And then I received orders to report to Camp Stoneman, Stoneman, Camp Stoneman, California, for processing to go to Korea.
Okay.
As a replacement.
And do you recall when that was, sir?
Probably 53.
53. Tell me about the trip from California to Korea.
It was on a ship. The name of the ship was the General SS Meigs, M-E-G-G as in George S. S as in sugar.
Okay.
It was 19 days. It was a very rough trip. Why it took so long to go from San Francisco we landed at a port called Sasebo. And we weren't there very long, maybe 48 hours. We made out wills. They were issued weapons, had to zero in their weapons, I don't know, for 300 yards. And we were issued ammunition and combat uniforms and gear, pistols, weapons, rifles, carbines, helmets, all that sort of stuff. And then we got onto a landing ship, LCI, landing ship infantry, and we went across that Sea of Japan, I believe it is. It's one of the roughest trips I've ever endured because it was a flat-bottom boat. And you're landed in Korea, South Korea.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about the first boat trip. So obviously you mentioned the second one, but tell me just briefly about the first boat trip that took 19 days. You said that was pretty rough. Was that? Do you have any particular memories or experiences on that 19-day trip that you'd like to share?
Well, no, I lived pretty good. I didn't live in the whole of the ship because I was commissioned. So I had a stateroom with, 8 or 10 other lieutenants were in there. We had our own bunk, clean sheets, and we ate 3 meals a day. But most of the time I was in the bunk and on my back. I didn't eat much.
Okay.
We were all sick.
Right. When you arrived at Sasebo, you said you took the boat across the Sea of Japan. How long did that take, sir? Do you recall?
Just maybe 12, 15 hours, something like that, maybe 18 hours.
And you said that was a horrible trip.
Oh, yeah, that was a flat boat. And, it went up and down and up and down and up and down, yeah. And I don't know how many boats there were. I don't know, 15, 20 boats, something like that.
Okay. So when do you recall when you arrived in Korea?
No, I think it was late April or May, something like that.
Okay.
I know it was still pretty cold over there.
Okay. When you first arrived in Korea, where did you arrive?
It was a Korean port. It could have been Busan, but I don't recall for sure.
Okay. So what do you recall about once you arrived, what was sort of the...
I know we got on trains,
okay,
and we went north, and they issued us more ammunition, and we had benches that we sat on, because sometimes the trains were ambushed by guerrillas and North Koreans at night. North Korean sympathizers.
Mm-hmm.
Not in force, not regiments or companies or divisions, because, the North Koreans were pretty much put away up in the north in those days, but they had some stragglers and people always trying to blow up the tracks and so forth. But anyway, we made it to, I forget where we get off the train, get on trucks, 2.5-ton trucks. I guess we went to division headquarters, then regiment, then battalion, then we went to a unit.
Okay.
Something like that. And that took probably maybe 3-4 days.
So what was, once you arrived at your final destination, and do you remember where that was, sir?
Yeah, I went to a rifle company, Fox Company, as a second lieutenant platoon leader.
When you arrived and you became a second lieutenant in Company F, how soon when you arrived did you go into your first combat action?
Right away, next day, I think, or that day, or the next day, I guess.
So, can you describe what that was like? Now, you're the second lieutenant.
Yeah, I had good enlisted men, good sergeants. I was apprehensive. Didn't know exactly what was going on. I know the company commander was the captain, and he talked to me and asked me if one of the best ways to survive is to do what those corporals and sergeants suggest that you do, and you're not issue any orders till you've been here a couple of weeks. Something like that, just keep your mouth shut and you're going to be okay.
Well, I guess that turned out to be good advice, I guess.
Oh, I guess so. Well, I'm still breathing. Those that don't do that, they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them. You listen to those with combat experience.
Yes.
And you don't try to outsmart them because you don't know what you're doing.
Right. From what I was reading, it was said that you then moved to Heartbreak Ridge, Sandbag Castle area?
Sandbag, Punchbowl and Heartbreak Ridge area. Sandbag Castle. That was off to our right or left, somewhere in there. There was a lot of late afternoon foggy fighting, night fighting, that sort of thing.
What was a typical, if there is such a word, day for you when you were out? So you were.
Well, I would usually sleep between 7 a.m. and 10. And then 10 on, I'd be trooping the line and checking for cave-ins and water in the trenches and in the foxholes and make sure the wire was right, our mines were right, and our booby traps were right, and morale was good, and a lot of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we were covering probably, I don't know, a couple 100 yards, I guess, maybe 300 maximum per platoon. And then I would sleep again from about 1, and else I was going out on patrol that night. I'd sleep from about 1 to 4:30 in the afternoon, and then I'd be up all night.
Okay.
We went to sleep at night.
And what was, can you describe the terrain that you were in at that time?
Very mountainous.
Okay.
Very mountainous, foggy, cold. Very mountainous. And I know for several years I never ate peanut butter anymore, or marmalade, or sausage, or fruit cocktail, because for weeks on end, that's all I ate.
Do you recall the first time that you saw someone get wounded or get killed? Do you remember that moment?
Oh, yeah, but I don't talk about those. I've been trying to forget those things for over 65 years, and I just cannot to exploit on that.
Okay.
I don't get to.
Okay, that's fine. So can you tell me about the patrol that you went on that you then were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross? Can you tell me about that evening or that day?
Yeah, I know that battalion wanted some prisoners, and I was picked to lead a heavily armed patrol, automatic weapons, lots of hand grenades, and I remember making a reconnaissance by air in a L-19 observation artillery spotter aircraft, and we were shot at, but we were shot down. And the pilot wouldn't go as close as I wanted it to have him close to the ground. But anyway, I know the ground was very rough, rocky. And I said to myself, my God, there's people of the battalion, they're not up there in an airplane, they're looking at maps. They don't know what the hell's down there. And so they wanted some prisoners, and so we trained for that mission for a couple of days, I think. Go loading up, doing this, doing that, and discussing this and discussing that. And it was cold when we went to get prisoners. I know it was very, very cold, very rocky. You couldn't see very far. The Chinese were shooting flares up all over the place, so you had to hit the ground when you heard them pop, so they wouldn't see you. Because once they saw that there are enemy forces out there in front of them, which would be the enemy, then artillery and mortars would come in on us pretty fast.
Okay.
But we didn't have to experience too much of that, as I recall, because we did pretty much the stake in the field. Then my sergeant, he fell. He fell from a cliff, about 60 feet, a long way down.
Wow.
Vertically, he was down quite a bit. And then I could hear him, and bouncing off the rocks and so forth, and I stepped up forward, because I was probably maybe 5, 10, 15 feet behind him. And then I went down and bounced all over the place. And when I came to a stop, I was at the bottom of that cliff. I don't think we were 10, 15 feet apart. So I was pretty well banged up and bruised. So what I did was my sergeant couldn't manipulate, couldn't move too. So I think I called up to the patrol on the radio and told them to go back to our lines, and that I would meet them, which we rehearsed all of this before, in case we ever got separated. We would meet at such and such a coordinate, such and such area, such and such a hill, such and such a time, the next day or 2 days or whatever. And so they went back to the friendly mainline resistance, and he wasn't a sergeant, he was a corporal, Gillikin Collier from Arkansas. And I guess, have you read about him?
No, I don't think I have, sir.
Yeah, his name was Collier. And we tried to make it up over that cliff because we knew that come daylight, we'd be ducks in a shooting gallery. And because we made enough noise falling down that cliff. But nobody bothered us. And then, because before light came, we were able to get to the top. How we did it, I don't know. I know I slid back down a couple of times, and so did he. Couldn't see. It was pitch black. But anyway, we got to the top, and we crawled south. And we got into a thicket. And it was a brook in the thicket. It was kind of a woods. You couldn't see. Well, we could see enemy looking for us because they knew that somebody was out there someplace, and they were looking, and we could see them, but they weren't right on top of us.
Okay.
And we just kind of held our breath, and we decided that we were not going to be taken prisoners. We would fight it out. We decided upon that because we heard rumors as to how prisoners are treated. We didn't want anything to do with that. So we just fight it out if we had to. And then we set out for our lines about 10:30 at night, and then we were ambushed. And then that's when all hell broke loose. And I know Collier was right in front of me, maybe 10 feet, something like that. And he yelled, "Lieutenant," and he had a burp gun, 45 caliber submachine gun. And he was not a burp gun, a submachine gun. We used to call them grease guns.
Okay.
And he was firing and throwing grenades. I'd lost my rifle. I'd lost it. Either falling down the cliff or coming up, I don't recall. But I had about 8 or 10 grenades. And I know we were fighting hand to hand. And I know he was doing a lot of damage to the Chinese, and I was doing as much as I could. And then he was shot up from grenade fire, and so was I. And so we fought as best we could. And then I know I was a bloody mess, and I figured that, and I didn't hear anything from Collier. So he was somewhere in front of me, but I didn't know where. And so then they started attacking me, and I was fighting as best I could. And then I remember I fought with one right pretty close. And then I had to put him away, and then I had 2 grenades left. I remember what I did was I pulled the pins on those 2 grenades and put them under my chest. And when you pull a pin on grenades, it's not fully armed until you let those levers go.
Right.
And then when that lever goes in, it's fully armed. You got 3 seconds, and then they explode. But anyway, I was very careful to put the grenades under my chest to them. So that if they turned me over, take my boots or my watch or something like that, I'd get another, 4, 6, 8 more of them. Many of them were around me. But I remember getting, kind of nudged with a toe, something like that, but I was never kicked or rolled or turned over. So if I had, the grenades were going off. And I was in and out of it, semi-conscious. And, I just laid there. My ankles hurt, my stomach, I was hurt all over the place. I didn't think I was going to survive. I was going to die any minute now. And then I know I heard some voices, and they were American voices, and they were friendly troops. I guess they were looking for Corporal Collier and I. And I know it was daylight then, and I know they rolled me over. And I'll forget one of them said, "Holy shit." Exactly, holy shit. And he saw those grenades, and he picked them up and he threw them, and they exploded, immediately. But away from harming anybody.
Right.
Didn't kill any friendly troops. Yeah, I was very happy to see them. I know they're Americans, but, I didn't know who was who.
Right.
Where they came from. And I think they put me on a stretcher and carried me back. This is daylight now, as I recall. And Collier, they found him before they did me, brought him back on a stretcher. And then we both went to an aid station. And then, as I recall, we were put on an H-13, which was a Bell helicopter. You were put on a pod, had a cover over it, and they flew you to a MASH hospital, which is, 15, 20-minute flight. And then the medics would come out to the helicopter and unload the bubble. You were under a bubble. Plastic bubble, something like that. Take you into the hospital as they went to work on you. And then I know that Collier kept asking for me, and I kept asking for him. And then after about 2 or 3 days, I hadn't seen him, couldn't find out anything about him, and they told me he died. And I was very upset about that.
Yeah.
Very upset. So that's about it.
When you said you had lost your weapon, and you were fighting a Chinese soldier sort of hand to hand.
Yeah.
And he had a weapon, but you didn't.
Yeah, he had an automatic weapon. Bullets were flying all over the place, but I was not hit by any Chinese bullets. I was hit with Chinese hand grenades. Pretty close to me.
So were you able to take the weapon from him, or just?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we struggled, and at that time it was flames were going off all over the place, so it was pretty bright out there. And no Chinese artillery mortars came in because they knew that where we were, they could see a lot of commotion going on. They didn't want to hurt any of their own people. That's the only thing I could think of.
Right.
But the flares, when they go off, you got like 1,000,000 candlelight power. It's pretty light. You can see pretty well.
So, in retrospect, when you took those grenades and you put them under your, pinned them to you.
I didn't pin them. Just laid them under my chest, and I laid them with the safety levers down.
Right.
Into the ground. And I had my hands on them, I think initially, to make sure that they were fitted correctly.
Okay.
And then I began to think, was going through my mind, I was passing out, coming away, passing out, coming away. What if I roll over while I'm passed out, that'd be the end of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's also thankful that no Chinese or enemy, tried to...
No, they kind of nudged me, a little bit with their toes, and but I guess they thought I was dead.
Right.
I guess, I could hear their voices. I guess somebody in charge, somebody in command, was telling them, we don't have time for boots and watches, and all that stuff. Let's get the heck out of here. Because there's enough noise going on that the Americans might send some people down here pretty soon, and we don't want to be caught.
Right.
So they moved out and got out of there.
So you were taken to the hospital, and you see 2 or 3 days later, Corporal Collier, you found out he had passed.
He had died, yeah, and that bothered me quite a bit, because they kept telling me that when I kept asking about him, he's asking for you, and he wants to know how you are, and we're telling him that you're fine, and which by then I think he was already dead, but they didn't tell me that until I, showed signs of improving my health.
Right.
He was probably dead 2 or 3 days.
Huh.
I don't know. When I found out about it, I was very upset.
Yeah. So what happened? How long did you stay in the hospital, sir?
Oh, maybe 10 days, something like that. Not. I don't think I was in there 2 weeks. But they took, some shrapnel out of me and so forth. And, I was in a bed, and but I don't remember operating room and all that sort of stuff. Well, they put you to sleep anyway, so
right.
I don't remember any of that.
So at that point, what was your major wound?
Oh, legs, arms, back.
Everything.
Some of my face.
Wow.
My face wasn't all torn up and ripped apart. No, I had fragments in my cheeks. Mostly my legs and my back.
Okay.
And my stomach.
After you were released
but
from...
no bullet wounds, just hand grenade fracture wounds.
Okay.
When I was in the hospital, I remember the commanding general, his name was Ridgely Gaither. G-A-T-H-E-R. He was a 2-star general. He was in World War II. And I remember him coming into the... we were in tents. Huge tents. They probably held, maybe 15, 20 wounded. And we were in beds, folding wrought iron beds. Had straw mattresses on them. And I remember somebody calling attention. Well, I wasn't moving anywhere. And I don't think anybody stood up when the general came in. And I heard my name mentioned. And then a hospital orderly brought him over to my bunk where I was lying down. And I looked up and I saw this 2 big stars on this fellow's helmet. And I knew that was the general. And he talked to me and pinned a Purple Heart on my blanket or sheet or something like that, and promoted me to first lieutenant, which is about the only thing that had in my mind was, that's about $18 more a month. I said, that's a good deal, $18 a month, something like that. And then he stayed around, he talked for a while, and then he talked to 1 or 2 others, wounded GIs, and then he left.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. After his service, Lieutenant Colonel Agnew had a successful career in business. Mr. Agnew has devoted his life to promoting patriotism and improving the quality of life of his fellow veterans. As a side note, listeners, my father, Dr. Joseph C. Kennedy, also served in Korea in 1953 in the 21st Infantry Division. Thank you for all those who served. This is Adam P. Kennedy. We're honoring the greatest warriors and leaders in modern American military history. Thank you for listening.